Welcome to Lesson 8 in Saxon Math Course 2. Today we'll be talking about fractions and percents and also taking a look at the inch ruler. Our objectives for today are, after this lesson you should be able to use fractions, percents, and mixed numbers to name a part of a whole, use a ruler to measure segments to the nearest 16th of an inch, and determine the precision of a measurement. Some review from last time. We talked about points, lines, rays, and segments. Remember where the arrows are on all of those things and how to name them. And remember we talked about intersecting and parallel lines. We talked about the 4 different kinds of angles: right, acute, obtuse, and straight. Let's take a look at our new concept for today. Fraction and percents, we use both of them to name part of a whole. So for example, say we've got this whole circle. This would be one circle. But we want to split it into parts. So we're going to split it into 4 equal parts. And say I shaded one of those parts. And I asked you, what fraction of this circle is shaded? In order to show that, using a fraction, we would use the 2 parts of a fraction. So fractions have 2 numbers in them. The bottom number is your denominator, and the top number is your numerator. So I'm just going to abbreviate those. N goes on top, denominator goes on the bottom. So if I were asking for the fraction of this circle, the denominator is the total number of pieces that I split the whole shape into. So you saw before, we split the shape into 4 pieces. So our bottom number, our denominator, is 4. Our numerator is the number that I'm asking you for. So if I asked you how many parts are shaded, then I would only put the shaded number of parts on the top. So that's only 1 part. So our fraction would be 1/4. If I ask the same question about what percent this is shaded, you have to think percent is always out of 100. So the whole circle would be, if I shaded 4 pieces out of 4, that would be the whole circle as a fraction. And as a percent, the whole circle would be 100%. So really what I need to do is I need to find 1/4 of 100%. And if you remember, we do that by dividing by the denominator. So we're going to do 100 divided by 4, and that equals 25. So 25% of this circle is shaded. Mixed numbers is a combination of a whole number and a fraction. So here's an example. Say we've got these 4 circles, and I shade in all of this one, and let's see if I can do that a little bit better. There we go. So I shade in all of this one, I shade in all of this one, I shade in all of this one, and then I shade in, let's do 3 of these pieces. Okay. So if I want to tell you in a mixed number how many circles are filled in, I first look at how many whole circles are filled in. Well, I've got 1, 2, 3 whole circles. So my whole number of my mixed number is 3. Then I look at the circle that's not totally filled in, this one right here, and I do what I did just before, and I figure out, well, what fraction of this circle is filled in. I had split it into 4 pieces, so that makes my denominator 4, and there are 3 of the pieces filled in, So my numerator would be 3. So this picture represents 3 3/4. That is a mixed number. Finally, we're going to look at fractions on a number line or a ruler. So when you're looking at a number line or a ruler, you first look at the whole numbers that the point is between. So say this is the part of the number line right here. Okay, and say the whole number 3 is here and the whole number 4 is here, and our point is right here. So we're between 3 and 4. That means if we were doing this as a mixed number, my mixed number, whole number, would be 3, because I'm past the 3, but I'm not to the 4 yet. Next, we're going to count how many spaces are between the two whole numbers. So I'm going to do that in a different color for you here. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 spaces between the whole number. So my bottom number would be 7, my denominator. And then we're going to count the tick marks, beginning with the mark just to the right of the smaller whole number until we get to the point. So I'll do that in another different color. Let's use black this time. So we're not going to count the big tick mark, that's by the 3. We're going to start just to the right. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. We're on the 5th tick mark. So that means our numerator is going to be 5. So this dot right here would represent the number 3 5/7. Our example is going to be on an inch ruler because you're going to have to be able to measure using fractions of an inch. Now this picture of an inch ruler already has labeled what the different marks on here mean. Your longer marks, like this one, are your 1/8 of an inch, and your smaller marks, like the one next to it, are your 1/16 of an inch. So if, for example, we had a line we were measuring that was this long, we're going to use what we just learned up here to figure out how long that line is. Now we're between the whole numbers 1 and 2, so we know that our whole number is going to be 1. And now we don't need to count the spaces between the inches because we know that there are 16 spaces between the inches. That's why it's called a 16th. So there are 16 spaces between the inches. We're going to put a 16 here, and we're going to measure to the nearest 16th of an inch. So now we just count the tick marks like we did before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we would be at 1 13/16 of an inch. Let's try one more. We'll do one more example. Let's say our line is this long. Now notice we're going to be at one of our 1/8 inch lines here. So we're between the 3 and the 4, so our whole number is 3. And since we're looking at one of our 1/8 inch lines, we're not going to make our bottom number 16. You could make it 16, but we're going to make it 8 because we know it's an 1/8 inch. That'll save us in the future from having to reduce the fraction. So then we just count the longer lines. We're going to skip counting the 16th line right next to the 3, and we're only going to count the longer 1/8 inch lines. So this is actually just 1/8. It's the first 1/8 inch line between 3 and 4. So this would be 3 1/8 inch. And we talked in our objectives, we talked about being able to talk about the accuracy of a measurement. So this ruler is, the smaller you divide the number line up into, the ruler into, the more accurate it is. So some inch rulers only have the whole inches. That's not as accurate as an inch ruler that is broken down into 1/16 of an inch. So the smaller unit that the ruler is broken into, the more accurately you can measure. So say you had a ruler just like this one, but it was broken up into 32nds of an inch, so it would have twice as many little marks between the whole inches. It might be a little confusing to use because of all the little marks, but you could measure your line more accurately because it has a smaller unit that it's broken down into. So just remember, the smaller the unit, the more accurately you can measure. That's the end of your video for today. Make sure you work through your practice problems and post any questions you have to the discussion section. We'll talk about them next time in class. We'll see you for lesson number 9.